Just an update too, because I told you last night about how Andrew Twiggy Forrest was talking nonsense about climate change and renewable energy.
And instead of knocking a slow-moving gracious wind tower, try a nuclear power plant or a belching coal plant next door. The fact that we can feel climate change already, despite the ocean soaking up most of our heat-generated emissions, means Australia has finally run out of time.
We can feel climate change already? It's loopy stuff, isn't it? And straight away last night on the program, we got a pretty strong response from the Nationals Senate leader.
Twiggy doesn't let his emotions get in the way of making money. And the reality is this guy is in receipt of tens of millions of dollars of Australian taxpayer subsidies in order to, create green hydrogen.
Well, no love lost there. It all spilled over again today, though, when Forrest gave a briefing to the Nationals party room. And apparently, things got a little heated.
A shouting match between Nationals MP Lou O'Brien and Andrew Forrest on the subject of renewable energy. During the spat, it's believed the member for Wide Bay called Mr Forrest a charlatan and a snake oil salesman, with another particular word.
It was quite the moment. There were only two other MPs there, Matt Canavan and David Gillespie. The other Nats had walked out of the room from this Twiggy Forrest briefing at that stage and apparently stood up with clenched fists.
Yeah, well, we don't know. Matt Canavan apparently wasn't there either. He'd already left. So, if only we could use the renewable energy that's generated out of heated political discussions. Let's get into the Wednesday wrangle now. I'm joined on the desk by Liz Storer, in early from the late debate. Good to see you, Liz. And Justin Smith down there in Melbourne. Tell us, mate, a bit of biffo between Twiggy Forrest and the Nationals MPs. It sounds like it's getting pretty heated down there, unsurprisingly, because Twiggy Forrest has started to talk like a Greens senator.
Oh, is he? Is he really a Green? So anyone who stands up and talks about climate change being a problem is a Green. That's an interesting perspective. Anyway, that's
anyone who said,
I love the fact that I love a bit of biffo.
Yeah, a bit of wrangling. We should get him here for a wrangle. But I mean, he says he can feel climate change now and that it's already causing death and destruction, and apparently that we can all switch to renewable energy and it's going to be rosy. I mean, this is just patently nonsense.
Well, look, I mean, I'm one of these people, I'm only going to talk for myself here. I'm one of these people, I believe that climate change is a very real thing. We need to do something about it. But I only ever want the truth. Twiggy can speak for himself. I only ever want the truth. You mentioned the story that the 9 papers, Sydney Morning Herald and The Age, were throwing out. Look, and I'm not going to pretend I'm not going to stick up for them either, but I would rather see stories like that than have fruitcakes running around saying, oh, climate change is a myth and yes, there may be climate change, but it's hardly a crisis. And we've been listening to that crap for years. So I think a little bit of balance and seeing a little bit of that story, I don't have a problem with that, to be frank.
Saying it's not a crisis is really not batty, and telling people what the temperature's going to be in their suburb in 2090 is a bit batty. But let me just put
it's over the top. It's over the top.
It is over the top. It is over the top. Let me just put the wrangle on hold for 1 second. I'll come back to you in a moment, Liz, because Keith Pitt is now available for us in Parliament House, Canberra. I want to get onto this idea of this biffo with Andrew Twiggy Forrest in the Nationals party room. Keith, apparently you'd left by the time this happened, but how did the briefing go, and are you surprised it all got a bit heated?
Well, Chris, I didn't go for the main reason I would have gotten a blue with Twiggy. I mean, this is a guy that continually calls for the diesel fuel rebate to be removed from the mining sector, but his company takes a couple of $100 million from memory, and that you don't need legislative change for that not to be taken. They've just got to not put the form in. And I've got to tell you, mate, it is no surprise to me that Lou O'Brien's stepping up for his constituents, because they don't have $150 million yachts. They've got to pay their bills.
You would have heard from your colleagues, though, exactly what went on. Stepping up, was it just arguing, or was there any physicality about it?
Oh, well, I'm advised there's none of that. But, I think the name-calling got out of hand. And Lou doesn't take a backward step, right? He's here to represent his people. He's got a pretty tough history coming through. A former police officer, did a lot of pretty tough work in some tough regions. And the idea that everybody's got to pay more than they can afford, well, that's something that he opposes, and he opposes it strongly. So it's no surprise to me whatsoever. and I expect you to do it again.
Yeah, well, I'd be happy to have a Thursday wrangle with Lou O'Brien on one side and Twiggy Forrest on the other if we could organise that. Now, I don't think it's going to happen, though. Just on the substance of this, though, I mean, I was staggered by what Twiggy Forrest was saying on Monday at the National Press Club. Now, on one level, it's just the absurdity of it, because we all know the transition to a net zero economy is massively difficult. It's not been done anywhere in the world, and all the technical advice, even from the International Energy Agency, now says it's impossible on current technology. So even putting that to one side, just the hypocrisy, because this man has turned himself into a multi-billionaire by exporting exporting iron ore. And the only reason that iron ore is valuable is because you use all these fossil fuels to turn it into steel.
Yeah, spot on again, Chris. And I'll give a shout out to the people at FMG. They're working hard for Australia. They're paying their taxes. They're contributing to our nation. They're getting well paid for tough work, and good on them, and there should be more of it, not less. But the idea that you're going to cover great swathes of the country with solar panels and wind turbines, and look at that report in Victoria that's now been withdrawn. 70% of agricultural land, and I'm advised that Mr Forrest said, well, farmers can just go and buy another farm if that's the one that's impacted. It's not that easy. And if you lose that much land, well, guess what happens to the price? It goes through the roof. I want farmers producing food, and I want power stations that produce power that is reliable and affordable, and that is not Labor's proposal whatsoever.
Food from farmers, power from power stations. It doesn't sound like too much to ask for. Thanks for ducking in, Keith. I appreciate it. We'll let you get back to the parliamentary duties. Just before we wrap up this topic, your thoughts on it, Liz? It's hardly surprising that the Nats are going to react pretty strongly to some of the nonsense coming from Twiggy Forrest.
Yeah, 100%. Read the room, Twiggy. Know your audience. This is the Nats party room. And I'm glad there was a bit of biff. I'm with Lou on this one, and frankly, I don't care what language you use. He was downright honest. No one should be listening to Twiggy on this particular topic. No one should be listening to anyone who's got this much of a vested interest in the barrow that they're pushing. I'm sorry, it means you don't really have that much credibility when you stand to gain so much by me falling for your BS.
Indeed.